The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched far beyond what any human eye could see. Massive pillars made of crystal reached up into darkness above, while the floor was made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Sarah Chen had seen many impressive things in her 45 years, but nothing quite like this. General Chen stood at the entrance of the chamber, looking small next to the huge doors that had just opened for her. She wore her dress uniform, the same one she had worn when receiving the Medal of Honor 3 years ago. The dark blue fabric looked almost black in the strange light of the alien chamber. Behind her walked Ambassador Rodriguez and Dr. Kim, but they seemed nervous. Chen felt calm. Around the chamber sat representatives from 47 different alien species. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Chen could not understand how they even moved. There were beings made of what looked like living crystal, creatures that seemed to be made of gas floating in containers, and things that looked like giant insects with too many eyes. The walk to the center of the chamber took 5 minutes. Each step echoed in the vast space. Chen could feel thousands of alien eyes watching her, but she kept her face empty of expression. She had learned long ago that showing emotion was often a mistake in situations like this. The beings around her whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music, static, or sounds that hurt to hear. Universal translators hung in the air around her, small floating devices that would change their words into English. She noticed that some of the aliens were pointing at her with appendages that might have been arms. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform. On it sat the council speaker, a being called Vexthol from a species called the Zephyrians. It looked like a person made of living diamond, tall and thin, with facets that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. When it moved, it made a sound like wind chimes. "Human Chen," the speaker said, and the translator made its voice sound cold and musical at the same time. "You have been summoned to answer for the crimes of your species." Chen stopped exactly where she was supposed to stop, according to the briefing materials they had given her. She did not bow, did not show respect, did not show fear. She simply stood and waited. The chamber fell quiet. For beings that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, they seemed very interested in one human woman, Council Member Thiakmor, who looked like a giant purple octopus with silver patterns on its skin, spoke next. "This is the first time in the history of our council that we have summoned a representative from a primitive species." The way it said primitive made clear that it meant this as an insult. "The first time we have needed to," added another council member. This one looked like a walking tree with eyes that glowed like stars. "Your species has become a problem." Chen listened to them talk about humans like they were discussing a pest that had gotten into their garden. They used words like barbaric, uncontrolled, and dangerous. She noticed that none of them seemed to know very much about humanity, despite their confidence in judging it. "General Sarah Chen," the speaker said again, "do you understand why you have been brought before us?" "I understand that you believe you have reasons," Chen replied. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber, and she noticed that some of the aliens leaned forward to hear her better. A sound that might have been laughter came from several of the council members. "Believe we have reasons," repeated one that looked like a floating brain in a clear bubble. "How amusing, as if there could be any doubt." The speaker gestured with one crystal arm, and the air above the chamber filled with holographic images. Chen watched without expression as the images showed human ships, human colonies, and human soldiers. "These are your crimes, human," the speaker said. 12 star systems invaded, mining operations destroyed, 3 of our fleets eliminated completely, and all of this done without any attempt at communication or negotiation. Chen studied the images carefully. She recognized some of the places and events shown, but not all of them. More importantly, she recognized something that the council clearly did not. "Your species has expanded into civilized space without permission," continued another council member, this one looking like a giant spider made of metal. "You have attacked our lawful operations and killed our people. You have committed acts of war against peaceful civilizations." The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from the various species. Chen heard clicks, hums, growls, and other noises that she assumed meant they all agreed that humanity was guilty of terrible crimes. "The evidence is clear," the speaker announced. "Humanity must withdraw from all civilized space immediately. You will return to your home system and remain there. Any human ships found outside of Sol system will be destroyed without warning. More sounds of agreement echoed through the chamber. Chen noticed that they seemed very confident in their ability to enforce this demand. Furthermore, the speaker continued, humanity will pay reparations for the damage you have caused. The amount will be determined by this council, and payment will begin immediately. Chen finally spoke. And if we refuse? The chamber fell silent again. The speaker's crystal body seemed to brighten. Then your species will be eliminated. Completely. We have done this before to species that refuse to follow the laws of civilized space. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Chen could feel the weight of it. The absolute certainty that these beings could do exactly what they said they would do. She had seen the technology displayed in the chamber, the casual use of power that humanity could barely understand. But she also noticed something else, something that made her want to smile, though she kept her expression neutral. I see, she said quietly. You have made your position very clear. Good, the speaker said. You have one rotation of your planet to provide us with your answer. We suggest you choose wisely. Chen nodded once. I will need to consult with my government, of course. Of course, the speaker agreed. But understand, human, that this is not a negotiation. This is a final demand. Your species will comply, or your species will cease to exist. As Chen turned to leave, she heard the council members beginning to talk among themselves again. They seemed pleased with how the meeting had gone. They seemed certain that they had solved their human problem. Chen walked back across the vast chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She did not hurry, did not show any emotion, did not give any sign of what she was thinking. But inside, she was thinking about star charts, about coordinates, about the careful way the council had presented their evidence, and about one very important question that none of these ancient, powerful beings had thought to ask. The great doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving the council to celebrate their success in dealing with the troublesome humans. They had no idea what was coming. 24 hours later, General Chen returned to the council chamber. This time she was not alone. Ambassador Rodriguez walked beside her, along with Dr. Kim and 2 other members of the human diplomatic team. But Chen had made it clear that she would do the talking. The council was already assembled when they arrived. The same 47 species sat in their places around the vast chamber, but now there was an energy in the air that had not been there before. They were excited, eager to hear humanity surrender. Chen noticed that some species that had not been present yesterday were now in attendance. Word had spread through the galactic community that the humans were going to be dealt with. Some of these beings had probably come to watch the show. The walk to the center felt different this time. Yesterday, Chen had been taking the measure of her opponents. Today, she knew exactly what she was dealing with. The speaker, Vexthul, rose from its position on the platform. The crystal being seemed to shine brighter today, as if it was enjoying its moment of power over the humans. Human Chen. The speaker's voice rang out through the chamber. You have had time to consider our demands. What is your species' answer? Chen stopped in the same place she had stopped yesterday. She clasped her hands behind her back and looked up at the speaker without expression. Before I give you our answer, she said, I would like to review the charges against humanity. I want to make sure I understand exactly what you believe we have done wrong. A sound that might have been irritation came from several council members. The speaker's crystalline face somehow managed to look annoyed. Very well, the speaker said, though I fail to see what purpose this serves. The evidence is clear. The holographic display activated again, filling the air above the chamber with images, but this time Chen paid attention to different details. She watched coordinates, listened to system names, noted the dates and locations of every incident. 12 star systems, the speaker announced as the first images appeared. Your species has established illegal colonies in 12 systems that belong to civilized space. The images showed human settlements on planets with unfamiliar skies. Chen recognized some of them, but not all. More importantly, she was memorizing the star charts that appeared with each image. Mining operations, continued a council member that looked like a collection of floating rocks held together by some kind of energy field. Your species has destroyed or taken control of 17 lawful mining operations. More images. Asteroid mining stations, gas giant processors, and deep space refineries. All showing human ships and human crews. Chen noticed that the aliens seemed surprised by human technology, as if they had expected something more primitive. Military actions, announced another council member, this one resembling a giant centipede made of metal and ceramic. Your species has destroyed 3 entire fleets belonging to the Hegemony Coalition. These were peaceful exploration and colonization fleets. The final images were of space battles. Chen watched human ships fighting against alien vessels that were clearly more advanced. She watched human fighters moving in patterns that seemed to confuse their enemies. She watched 3 entire alien fleets disappear into debris fields. But what Chen found most interesting was what the aliens were not saying. What they were not noticing. The total death toll, the speaker concluded, is over 30,000 beings from 15 different species, all killed by human military action. The chamber fell silent as the images faded. Chen could feel the weight of all those alien eyes on her, waiting for her to admit guilt, to beg for mercy, to offer surrender. Instead, she asked a question. These 12 star systems, she said calmly. What do you call them? The question seemed to confuse the council. Several members exchanged what might have been glances with their neighbors. What do we call them? Repeated the speaker. They have names, of course. System designations. What does it matter what we call them? I would like to hear the names, Chen said. All of them. The speaker's crystal body flickered with annoyance, but it gestured to another council member. This one looked like a giant slug with too many eyes, and when it spoke, its translator made it sound bored. System GC447 Alpha, it read from some kind of device. System GC448 Beta. System GC451 Gamma. System GC452 Delta. The list continued, each name sounding like a bureaucratic designation rather than anything meaningful. Chen listened to all 12 names. Then she asked another question. And the mining operations? What systems were they in? Another council member provided 17 more designations, more bureaucratic codes, more numbers and letters that meant nothing to anyone who did not work for the Galactic Council. And the fleet battles? Chen asked. Where did those take place? 3 more system designations, 3 more sets of coordinates that the council had assigned to what they considered their territory. Chen nodded thoughtfully. I see. And you consider all of these systems to be part of what you call civilized space? Of course, the speaker said. They have been mapped and claimed according to galactic law. They are under the protection of the council. For how long? Chen asked. Some for centuries, replied a council member that looked like a walking flower with thorns for arms. Others more recently, but all legally claimed and properly documented. Chen was quiet for a long moment, as if she was thinking about something very important. The council members began to shift in their seats, making sounds that suggested impatience. Human, the speaker said finally. Enough delays. You have heard the charges. You have seen the evidence. What is your species' answer to our demands? Chen looked up at the speaker, then let her gaze move around the chamber, meeting the eyes or eye equivalents of as many council members as she could. I have a question for the council, she said. Ask it. Quickly, the speaker replied. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant smile. Which star? She asked. Do you call Sol? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The chamber, which had been filled with the low sounds of alien conversation, fell completely silent. Sol? Repeated the speaker, and for the first time its voice sounded uncertain. Sol, Chen confirmed. The star that my species calls home. The star around which Earth orbits. I would like to know what designation you have given to our home system. The silence stretched on. Chen could see council members looking at each other, some consulting devices, others making sounds that might have been whispered questions. Finally, a council member that looked like a collection of geometric shapes held together by light spoke up. We have no record of a system called Sol in our databases. No record, Chen repeated. How interesting. The speaker's crystal form was no longer shining as brightly. Human, what is the purpose of this question? Chen's smile grew wider, but it was still not a pleasant smile. The purpose, she said, is that I think we need to have a very different conversation than the one you planned. The silence in the council chamber had a weight to it now, like air before a storm. General Chen stood in the center of the vast space, surrounded by beings that could destroy her planet with a thought, and she smiled like someone who had just won a game that no one else knew they were playing. No record of Sol, she repeated, letting the words hang in the air. How very interesting indeed. The speaker, Vexthul, made a sound like crystal chimes in the wind. Its form flickered with colors that Chen suspected indicated confusion or concern. "Human Chen," the speaker said, "we have been very patient with your questions, but this council demands answers, not riddles. What is the meaning of this delay?" Chen reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small device. Several council members reacted with alarm, and Chen could see weapon systems beginning to power up around the chamber. "Relax," she said calmly. "It's just a data pad. Standard human technology. Nothing that could hurt anyone in this room." She activated the device and a holographic display appeared above it, much smaller than the council's massive projections but clear enough for everyone to see. "This," Chen said, "is what humans call Sol, our home star. Perhaps you know it by a different name?" The display showed a star chart centered on a yellow star. Around it orbited 8 planets with various moons, asteroid belts, and other objects clearly marked. Data scrolled alongside the image showing coordinates, spectral classification, and other information. Chen could see council members consulting their own devices, comparing the data she was showing with their own records. She could hear sounds that might have been surprise or confusion from different parts of the chamber. "Ah," said the council member that looked like floating rocks held together by energy. "Yes, we have the system in our records. It is designated GC001 Prime. GC001 Prime," Chen repeated. "How long has it had that designation?" "According to our records," the floating rocks replied, "it was first mapped and claimed 247 of your years ago." Chen nodded. "And who made that claim?" "The Hegemony Coalition," another council member answered. This one looked like a giant insect with too many wings. It was one of their earliest expansion efforts in that sector. "I see," Chen said. She touched her datapad again, and the star chart zoomed out showing nearby systems. "And these systems around GC001 Prime, when were they claimed?" More consultation with alien devices, more sounds of confusion. "Various times," the speaker answered, and its voice was no longer as confident as it had been. "Most within the last 2 centuries. All by members of the coalition, of course." Chen touched her datapad again. Now the display showed a larger region of space with dozens of star systems highlighted in different colors. Red systems, blue systems, green systems, all connected by lines that showed trade routes and communication networks. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," Chen said, and her voice carried clearly through the vast chamber, "I would like to present to you a map of what humans call the local sector." She paused, letting them study the display. She could see alien heads or head equivalents turning, devices being consulted, urgent conversations beginning in languages that sounded like music or static or things that hurt to hear. "The red systems," Chen continued, "are what we call the core systems. The first systems settled by humans after we developed faster-than-light travel. That was 320 years ago." More sounds of surprise from the council. Chen noticed that several members were standing now, or doing whatever passed for standing in their species. "The blue systems are what we call the industrial sector, settled between 250 and 200 years ago. Major manufacturing centers, mining operations, and military installations." Chen touched the datapad again, and more systems lit up on the display. "The green systems are the colonial sector, settled between 200 years ago and 50 years ago. Agricultural worlds, research stations, and civilian populations." She paused again, watching the council members frantically consulting their records. "And the yellow systems," Chen said, "are the frontier sector, settled within the last 50 years. Still being developed, still being explored." The chamber was no longer silent. Alien voices were rising, some in what sounded like anger, others in confusion, still others in what might have been fear. "Human," the speaker said, and its crystal form was flickering rapidly now. "What are you claiming?" Chen smiled again. This time there was no humor in it at all. "I'm not claiming anything," she said. "I'm stating facts. Every system that you showed me yesterday, every colony you accused us of establishing illegally, every mining operation you said we destroyed, every fleet battle you said we fought." She touched the datapad one more time and the display changed. Now it showed the same systems that the council had shown yesterday, but with human designations instead of council ones. System GC447 Alpha is what we call Proxima Centauri. Human colony established there 290 years ago. Current population, 12 million. The chamber erupted in sound. Chen raised her voice to continue over the noise. System GC448 Beta is what we call Wolf 3529. Major Industrial Center. Human population, 45 million. System GC451 Gamma is what we call Tau Ceti. Agricultural Center and Fleet Base. Human population, 60 million. She continued down the list, giving human names and populations for every system the Council had accused humanity of invading. With each name, the sounds from the Council grew louder and more agitated. System GC452 Delta is what we call Vega, one of our oldest colonies. Human population, 120 million. When she finished the list, the chamber fell silent again. But this was not the confident silence of yesterday. This was the silence of beings who were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. As for the mining operations, Chen continued calmly, those were human-owned facilities that had been operating for decades or centuries. The fleets that destroyed them were uninvited guests who refused to respond to communication attempts and opened fire when approached by human security forces. The speaker's crystal form had stopped flickering. Now it just looked dim, like a light that was running out of power. And the 3 fleets that were destroyed, Chen said, were military forces that entered human space without permission, ignored all attempts at communication, and began attacking civilian targets. Chen deactivated her datapad and put it back in her pocket. So you see, she said, looking around the chamber at beings who ruled a galaxy, but had never bothered to check whether the space they were claiming actually belonged to someone else. The charges against humanity are quite correct. We did establish colonies in 12 systems. We did destroy mining operations. We did eliminate 3 fleets. She paused, letting that sink in. But those systems were ours. Those mining operations were on our territory, and those fleets were invading our space. The chamber was dead silent now. Chen could feel the weight of understanding settling over the council like a heavy blanket. Which brings me, Chen said quietly, to a very important question that I need to ask this council. She looked directly at the speaker, meeting its crystalline gaze without flinching. You invaded our home, she said. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The words hit the council chamber like a physical blow. You invaded our home. General Chen spoke them quietly, but in the absolute silence that had fallen over the vast space, they rang out like a bell. For a moment that seemed to last forever, nothing moved. 47 different species, beings that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, sat frozen in shock as the meaning of what they had just heard settled into their minds. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. Alien voices rose in every language imaginable. Some sounded angry, others confused, still others frightened. The crystalline speaker, Vexthol, was flickering so rapidly that it looked like a strobe light. Council members were standing, floating, or doing whatever their species did when agitated. Chen stood calmly in the center of it all, waiting. Silence. The speaker's voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by systems that made it sound like thunder. Silence in this chamber! The noise died down, but Chen could still hear whispered conversations in a dozen different alien languages. She could see devices being consulted, records being checked, urgent messages being sent. Human Chen, the speaker said, and its voice was no longer confident. You are making a very serious accusation. I'm not making an accusation, Chen replied. I'm stating a fact. Your coalition forces invaded human space. They established mining operations on our territory without permission. When we asked them to leave, they refused. When we tried to enforce our territorial rights, they attacked our civilian populations. Council member Thiakmor, the giant purple octopus with silver patterns, spoke up. This is impossible. Our records show no evidence of any species claiming those systems before we arrived. Chen smiled, and this time there was genuine amusement in her expression. Your records, she said. Yes, let's talk about your records. She pulled out her datapad again, and once more a holographic display appeared above it. This is a timeline, she said. Human expansion into what we call the local sector. The display showed dates and star charts, tracking human movement from Sol outward over more than 3 centuries. 320 years ago, humans developed faster than light travel. 315 years ago, we established our first colony outside Sol system. 300 years ago, we founded the colony at Proxima Centauri. More dates, more systems, a steady expansion outward from Earth. 290 years ago, Wolf 359. 280 years ago, Tauseti. 270 years ago, Vega. Chen looked around the chamber, making sure she had everyone's attention. Now, she said, according to your records, when did the Coalition first claim these systems? Silence, then, reluctantly, the floating rocks spoke up. The earliest claims in that sector date back 247 years. 247 years, Chen repeated. 50 years after humans had already settled most of them. 100 years after we established our first colonies there. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Council members were looking at each other, some making sounds that might have been distress or confusion. But that's not the interesting part, Chen continued. The interesting part is why your records don't show any evidence of human presence. She touched her datapad again, and the display changed to show communication frequencies and signal patterns. For 320 years, human colonies in the local sector have been broadcasting on standard communication frequencies, radio, subspace, quantum entanglement networks. We've been putting out signals that any space-traveling civilization should be able to detect. She paused, letting that sink in. We've also been listening. For 320 years, we've been monitoring all communications in our space. We heard your ships coming long before they arrived. The chamber was dead silent now. Chen could see the understanding dawning on alien faces, or what passed for faces. You want to know why your records don't show any evidence of human presence? Chen asked. Because you never bothered to look. You never tried to communicate with anyone who might already be living there. You just assumed that any system not already claimed by a council member was empty and available for colonization. Council member Zektar, who looked like a walking tree with glowing eyes, made a sound like wind through leaves. This cannot be true. The Coalition follows all proper procedures for exploration and colonization. Your proper procedures, Chen said, apparently don't include checking whether someone else is already living there. She touched the datapad again, and the display showed a series of recorded communications. These are recordings of attempts by human colonies to contact Coalition survey teams, first contact protocols, universal mathematical sequences, even simple radio broadcasts saying, "Hello, we live here. Please respond." The recordings played, showing human voices speaking in clear, careful English, followed by mathematical sequences and musical patterns designed to show intelligence. Every single one of these attempts was ignored, Chen said. Your survey teams heard our communications and chose not to respond. They filed reports claiming the systems were uninhabited. More recordings played. These showed Coalition ships arriving at human colonies, mining operations being established on human territory, and human security forces being fired upon when they tried to make contact. So yes, Chen said, deactivating the display, we destroyed your mining operations. We eliminated your fleets. We drove your forces out of our space. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as she could, because they were trespassers who became invaders when they refused to leave. The speaker's crystal form had gone almost completely dark. When it spoke, its voice was barely audible. If this is true, it said, then the Coalition has committed acts of war against a sovereign species. Yes, Chen said simply. You have. But, the speaker continued, you could have contacted us. You could have made your presence known to the Council. This misunderstanding could have been avoided. Chen's expression changed. The calm professionalism was still there, but now there was something else underneath it. Something cold and hard, could we? She asked. Let me ask you something, Speaker Vexthal. What happens to species that contact the Council and ask to join your galactic civilization? The speaker's form flickered. They are evaluated. Their technology, their culture, their military capacity. If they meet our standards, if they meet your standards, Chen interrupted, they become junior members of the Coalition. They follow Council law. They accept Council authority. They give up their independence in exchange for protection and trade rights. She paused. And if they don't meet your standards? The speaker was quiet for a long moment. When it finally answered, its voice was even quieter than before. They are guided, helped to develop, until they can meet our standards. Guided, Chen repeated. How interesting. And species that refuse this guidance? Another long pause. They are considered a threat to galactic stability. And threats to galactic stability are eliminated, Chen said. It wasn't a question. The chamber was so quiet now that Chen could hear the hum of the life support systems. She could see council members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "So you see," Chen said, "we had three choices. Join your coalition and give up our independence, submit to your guidance and let you control our development, or be eliminated as a threat." She smiled, but there was no humor in it at all. "We chose a fourth option." The speaker's crystal form flickered with what might have been fear. "What fourth option?" Chen's smile grew wider. "We chose to let you invade our space, document your capabilities, study your technology, and learn everything we could about you before you learned anything about us." The meaning of her words hit the council like a shockwave. Some members stood up so quickly that they knocked over chairs or platforms. Others made sounds that Chen was pretty sure were expressions of alarm or terror. "For 247 years, Chen continued calmly, humanity has been watching the Galactic Council. We know who you are, where you come from, how many ships you have, what your technology can do. We know your military capabilities, your trade routes, your political weaknesses." She paused, letting that sink in. "You, on the other hand, know almost nothing about us." The chamber erupted in noise again, but this time it sounded different. This time it sounded like fear. "Which brings me," Chen said, raising her voice to be heard over the chaos, "to what happens next." The chaos in the council chamber reached a peak that seemed to shake the very walls. 47 species that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia were faced with a reality they had never imagined. They were not alone at the top of the galactic hierarchy. General Chen stood in the center of it all, waiting with the patience of someone who had planned for this moment for a very long time. Silence. The speaker's voice boomed again, but this time it took much longer for the noise to die down. When it finally did, the atmosphere in the chamber had changed completely. The confidence and authority that had filled the space yesterday was gone, replaced by something that felt very much like fear. "Human Chen," the speaker said, and its crystal form was barely glowing now. "What do you want?" Chen smiled. This time there was no coldness in it, no hidden threat. This was the smile of someone who was about to make an offer. "What I want," she said, "is very simple. I want to prevent a war that would be bad for everyone involved." She pulled out her data pad one more time, and the holographic display that appeared above it was larger and more detailed than any she had shown before. "This," she said, "is what humans really know about the galaxy." The display showed a three-dimensional map of local galactic space, but where the Council's maps showed 47 member species controlling most of the known galaxy, Chen's map showed something very different. Hundreds of dots filled the display, each one representing a different star system. Most were colored in shades that Chen had not used before. Only a small portion showed the familiar colors of Council space. "The 47 species of the Galactic Council," Chen said, "control approximately 15% of this region of the galaxy." Sounds of shock came from around the chamber. Council members were leaning forward, staring at the display in disbelief. "The remaining 85%, Chen continued, "is inhabited by over 200 species that you have never contacted, never discovered, and in most cases never even imagined." She touched the data pad, and different sections of the map began to light up with more detail. "The Kithera Collective controls this region," she said, highlighting a cluster of systems that dwarfed Council space. 41 species working together in a completely different political structure than yours. They've been watching you for over 1,000 years. More systems lit up. The Wanderer fleets control the space lanes in this entire sector. Nomadic species, but with technology that makes Council ships look like toys. More lights. The Silent Worlds. 63 species that communicate entirely through quantum entanglement. They think your subspace radio is primitive and noisy. More and more systems appeared on the display, each representing civilizations that the Council had never known existed. "And then there's the Deep Council," Chen said, highlighting a region of space that was larger than all the others combined. 107 species that formed their own galactic government, about the same time yours was getting started. They've been having a very good laugh about your claims to be the rulers of civilized space. The chamber was dead silent now. Chen could see council members staring at the display with expressions that she was pretty sure indicated stunned disbelief. "How?" the speaker whispered. "How is this possible? Our exploration fleets have surveyed—" "Your exploration fleets," Chen interrupted, "have surveyed the systems that these other civilizations wanted you to survey. You found the species that wanted to be found. You've discovered the planets that were left empty for you to discover. She paused, letting that sink in. The galaxy is much more crowded than you thought, and much better organized. Council member Thakmor made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. You're saying that the council... I'm saying that the Galactic Council is the new kid on the block, Chen said. And all the older kids have been watching you play in the sandbox, wondering when you were going to grow up enough to notice them. The implications of this revelation rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Species that had thought they were the masters of the galaxy were realizing they were more like children playing at civilization, while the adults watched from a distance. But why? Asked the walking tree with glowing eyes. Why would they hide from us? Why not make contact? Chen's expression became serious again. Because, she said, your track record with species that don't meet your standards isn't very good. She touched the datapad again, and the display changed to show a list of names and dates. The Helian Republic, eliminated for refusing to accept guidance 4,000 years ago. The Morphic Collective, eliminated for threatening galactic stability 3,000 years ago. The Singing Stars, eliminated for incompatible ideology 2,000 years ago. The list went on, and on, and on. 43 species eliminated by the Galactic Council over the last 10,000 years, Chen said. 43 civilizations wiped out because they didn't fit your definition of what galactic citizens should be. The chamber was so quiet that Chen could hear her own heartbeat. So the other civilizations in the galaxy have been watching you, she continued, studying you, learning about you, waiting to see if you would ever grow past the need to eliminate everyone who disagrees with you. She deactivated the display and put the datapad away. And now, she said, they've asked humanity to make you an offer. The speaker's crystal form flickered weakly. What offer? Chen clasped her hands behind her back and looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as she could. The Galactic Council can continue to exist, she said. You can continue to govern your member species and control your territory, but you will recognize that you are not the only power in the galaxy. She paused. You will withdraw from all human space immediately. You will pay reparations for the damage your forces have caused to human colonies and installations, and you will enter into formal diplomatic relations with humanity as an equal power. And if we refuse, the speaker asked, though its voice suggested it already knew it wouldn't like the answer. If you refuse, Chen said, then humanity will share everything we know about Council military capabilities, political weaknesses, and strategic vulnerabilities with every other major power in the galaxy. The threat hung in the air like a sword. And then, Chen continued, 207 species that have been waiting for an excuse to deal with the Council problem will have all the information they need to do it. The silence that followed was absolute. Chen could see the mathematics of the situation working through alien minds. 47 species against over 200. Known technology against unknown capabilities. A 10,000-year-old empire against civilizations that might be even older. You have a choice, Chen said quietly. You can accept that the galaxy is bigger than you thought and learn to live as equals with your neighbors. Or you can continue to believe that you're the only real civilization out here and discover what the rest of the galaxy thinks about that attitude. She smiled one last time. I recommend the first option. It's much safer for everyone involved. The speaker's crystal form had gone almost completely dark. When it spoke, its voice was barely a whisper. You're asking us to give up everything we've believed about our place in the galaxy? No, Chen said. I'm asking you to accept the truth about your place in the galaxy. You're important. You're powerful. You're a major civilization with a lot to offer, she paused. But you're not the only one. The chamber fell silent again. But this time it wasn't the silence of shock or fear. It was the silence of beings who were thinking very hard about the future of their civilization. How long do we have to decide? The speaker asked finally. Take all the time you need, Chen said. But understand that the longer you take, the more nervous your neighbors get about what you might be planning. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at the council. Oh, and one more thing, she said. Humanity would like to apply for membership in the Deep Council. We think it's time we started participating in galactic politics with the grown-ups. General Sarah Chen walked out of the council chamber for the last time, leaving behind 47 species to contemplate a galaxy that was suddenly much larger, much more complex and much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Behind her, the silence stretched on and on. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was over. The age of galactic democracy was about to begin.